anyone with an idea can now bring it to life.
I see some businesses this year kind of gone all in on AI.
It's a question of what do you build? How should it work? How does it create value for your customers? How does it change the culture of your team? If you're using judgment, if you're using context, if you're creating relationships, then I think you have a very bright future, and you're going to look at AI as an amazing enabler. There's really two questions, and one question is, I ask people is, do you think the property manager is the center of the story or the landlord? I think the future of property management is centered on the idea that property management is the one place where you create and nurture ongoing customer relationships.
It's almost Christmas. Have you been naughty or nice this year? Is AI a threat to your property management business or the key to future profitability? While some agencies have gone all in this year, others are stuck in wait-and-see mode. But here's something you might not have considered. It's actually not about the AI itself, but about the value AI can create for your customers. Today, my guest on Thought Leaders is Ben White, CEO of Ailo, and today we've got a playbook for you on how to get optimistic about an AI-enabled future while creating value for your customers and for your team. Stick around right to the end and you'll find out why AI is a cultural issue and not a tech problem, and the simple framework that determines whether AI threatens your business or transforms it, to the surprising research that shows people working with AI report more excitement and enthusiasm, not less, and what this could mean for your team culture. And thirdly, why optimism is actually a precondition to seeing the future clearly and how this changes everything about your AI strategy. And don't miss the bit where we vibe code an improvement ROI calculator for landlords. Let's dive in. Ben, welcome back to Thought Leaders.
Thank you for having me.
It's almost Christmas. Hard to believe. First question, have you been naughty or nice this year?
I've tried to be nice. I've tried. Does that count? I think that counts.
Yeah, I do
Actually.
think that counts. Can I ask you what you're hoping for from Santa this year?
I tell you one thing I learned to appreciate more is time. Is the most valuable thing. And I know it's such a trite thing. I've heard lots of people say it. I think this year I really started to understand that, what
Yeah.
the value of time and how important it is and how precious it is. And in some ways, the best thing you can give someone is your time is the most valuable thing, and to receive it from someone else too. So that's how I think about things at the moment.
Look, I wanted to get you back on the show. Number one, because I really enjoyed our chat earlier in the year, but number two, because I'm sort of seeing this fascinating split. And I see some businesses this year, interestingly enough, have kind of gone all in on AI and others are still in wait and see mode. So from your vantage point at Ailo, seeing all the agencies that you've seen this year, what do you feel is happening out there? What are you seeing?
I think people are still trying to. I learn more through. I'll tell you one thing I have learned this year in AI is that unless you're actually using it yourself and not using it as a consumer, but trying to build products yourself, like truly, then I don't think you really understand what it is. And so one thing I've learned, and we're doing it here at Ailo, is everyone's expected to be building, whether you're, doesn't matter where you are. It's democratized. It's turned anyone with an idea can now bring it to life. Doesn't not necessarily the best product, and it's not as neat and all those things, but the democratization and lets people using English develop something that's in their head is so powerful, and is going. I think that's the idea that's going to change everything. Is not necessarily AI. It's the fact that any question you had is now can be answered. Any idea you've got can now be built. It's a question of what do you build? How should it work? How does it create value for your customers? How does it change the culture of your team? They're the questions that are fundamental now that I think when product was hard, much harder to build, it was a tech problem. Now I think it's a cultural problem. And so those questions around AI is the people that struggle most with AI, in my experience, are people that don't understand how they create value for their customers. Because if you don't know how you create value for your customers, you cannot answer what AI is going to do to you. You can't. It's like trying to solve a simultaneous equation with four unknowns. You just can't do it. Can't be done. Unless you understand the customer, unless you understand how you create value and your role in it, you cannot talk about that. That's the end of the discussion. If you understand that, then you can talk about AI. That's what I've learned. Probably a long answer to your question, Sam, but that's what I've been learning this year.
Yeah, I think, like what I've been trying to tell people is that all types of AI are not created equally.
Mhm.
You've got AI, which is ChatGPT over here, and you've got some people who are saying, I'm AIing because I can put a few prompts into ChatGPT. But, I'm sort of saying to everyone, unless can use it in four modes of AI as a freelancer, collaborator, as a delegate, and then as an OS, like there's no point in me knowing all the fancy prompts and things like that if I can't level up my team.
Yep.
It's the way I've been thinking about it.
For me, where I've got to is there's in property management. I don't know much about sales. I got to admit, sales I don't spend much time thinking about, and there are people much smarter than I am who spend a lot more time. So I defer to that. But when it comes to property management, I spend a lot of time thinking about that. And to me, there's really two questions. And one question is I ask people is, do you think the property manager is the center of the story or the landlord? And you've got to who's the center of the story you're thinking about? That's question one. And I think there's roughly two choices. I'm the property manager. I'm at the center. Of course, that's me. I'm the center of the story. What's AI going to do? How's it going to impact my job? Is that's putting themselves at the center. If it's how can AI add more value for my customers, then they're putting the customer at the center of it. Question two is, do you believe the value to customers is going to be the same, or do you believe it's going to be different? Now, and they interact with each other. If you believe the property manager is at the center and you think the job is basically the job and always will be, then AI, its job is going to, and you see them already, help a property manager do their job. It's going to be AI, this inspection tool I use wrote the report for me. I took photos and it wrote the report for me. I'm at the center of the story. And they assume that that can go on forever because the value's not changing. So that's there in one quadrant. Another person I think could validly say the same thing. Someone could say that inspection tool wrote the report instead of me. Now that person is putting the landlord at the center, and they're assuming, if you run an inspection app, I imagine their future is to take your salary. That's the job. That's what they're going to do. So that's the landlord at the center. The job is still the same. It's still to write a report. Then you're in competition with your inspection app. So fundamentally, as a property manager, there's no doubt in my mind that's true. If that's their business model, that's two quadrants. Other quadrants are maybe the entire future of inspections are going to be different. I mean, what actually is an inspection? An inspection is about risk management, and there's a whole bunch of things. Maybe the future is totally different, and the value you create is different. And those people are thinking more future around the future of how do you create value for customers. I believe that the most fertile ground is the customers at the center, and the job's going to change. I'm in that top right-hand quadrant. A lot of people are in the property manager at the center, and nothing's going to really change. I think those people are going to, next 2 or 3 years, are going to be very disappointed that their inspection app is now taking their job. Because they see their job as taking photos and writing a report. I don't believe that's the job of property management, to take photos and write a report. Fundamentally don't believe that's what property management is. You and I have talked about this before. I think the future of property management is centered on the idea that property management is the one place where you create and nurture ongoing customer relationships. That's the center of it with everyone in the community. So I'm not afraid of technology writing reports for a property manager. I don't think that's a risk. But if you believe nothing's going to change, property management is collecting rent, fixing things when they break, and doing inspection reports, then you're in competition as a property manager with an inspection app. There's no doubt in my mind that's what will happen if that's the future. I don't believe in that future, but that's what it means.
This is, I guess, like the whole center of this conversation is that where I'm standing, like, I've heard a lot of people at different technology conferences say that there is some kind of AI enabled direct to landlord model. And I do remember very vividly our conversation a couple of months ago and telling everyone it's only that way if you see it that way, like if you can see it as a broader definition. And so I guess, like, what do you feel is what agencies or directors should be paying attention to right now when it comes to AI and how they view their businesses?
If you've got to be an optimist on the future of relationships. And if that's not true, then I'm not sure the future of any job, frankly, anywhere, not just our industry. But I believe in it. I don't think that's naive. I think the idea that the relationships, people is the most important asset. It's where people live. It's a fascinating industry. It's very valuable. There's so many parts to it. People don't use a property manager because they don't want to bother collecting rent and fixing toilets. They want someone to help them in the journey. They want advice. They want someone to help them shepherd the investment through. That's what it is. I think that's premium. If I were running a real estate agency now, I'd be very seriously thinking about how do I create value for customers? How can I create new sources of value for customers? Because even today, if you just look today, leaving aside AI, if you look at the P&L of a property management business, the most important fee is fee for collecting rent. It's 80% of the revenue of a business. Now, honestly, how much time does it take you to collect rent? It's not a job anymore. Oddly enough, used to be. It used to be you, and my dad tells it for his first job in real estate, if you believe this story, his first job was walking the streets with a bag, knocking on doors and collecting rent. That was the rent roll. You'd do the rent run every Wednesday. You'd knock on the door, collect rent, issue a receipt, and you walk around, you end up at the bank and do your deposit. That was a job and you got paid for it, 8%. Now there's no work to be done, particularly on some of the more modern platforms. You literally do not do any work. Yet that is still the center of your revenue stream. I reckon you got to rethink, you got to accept that there's a misalignment between how you create value and how you charge for it, not in a negative way, but in a positive way. There's so much you do for customers that you're not charging for and that you don't get credit for. They don't even know you're doing it, let alone all the things you're not yet doing that you could be doing. So I think it's limitless opportunity to get this right. So I'm on the spectrum of optimism. I'm past 10 out of 10 because if I had to choose one industry I'd want to be in post AI, I'd want to be an industry that's the most important asset people have. I'd want to be in the industry that has a lot of kind of human dynamic. I'd want to be in a business that has a lot of emotion because someone lives in this with their home and where they're raising their family. I'd like it to be an investment. So there's kind of economics because it is, as a landlord, I'm doing this for my future and my so on. I mean, it's got everything you'd want. Every recipe that you come up with has all the right pieces in it. How good's that? And you have a physical location. I'd want to physically be connected to something. Otherwise, I'd be worried someone out of America is going to do some startup and wipe us out. You're local. You know people. You have relationships. You have skills. You have an understanding of what people want. You're managing the emotion, the messiness of relationships. That's value. Endless value. It's like a nuclear generator. So I can't imagine why people. I think the only way you'd be negative is if you have a very narrow view of property management, which is defined as collecting rent, fixing things when they break, and finding a tenant when it's vacant. If you think that's property management, then we're past the use by date on that business. If you believe it's doing all those other things we talked about, we haven't even started yet in terms of creating value. So that's where I'm at.
So I remember also it was a bit of a light bulb moment for me last time we talked about how you said that you thought that the smoke alarms was the biggest missed opportunity, as in,
Mm.
it would have been a great opportunity to sort of develop some services around that sort of thing. Can you see anything emerging at the moment? Like, what sort of services, given all the recent changes in legislation, do you see as adjacent or,
Well,
valuable?
yeah, there's a couple of areas. I think if you look at an investment, from a landlord's perspective, they've got cash flow, which is rent. They've got expenses or all the bills. They've got their mortgage and they've got capital appreciation and they have risk. They're all areas that are fertile. So take one is we talked about earlier about inspections. If you think the job of a property manager, go and take some photos and write a report, then I don't know, there's a big future in that. However, if you stand back and say, why do we do this? It's part of risk management because the point of doing a routine inspection, you're kind of auditing how's it going, you're checking for maintenance, you're making sure things are found before they become a big problem. You're frankly checking the tenant complying with the rules is a good tenant and so on. Now, there's 10 questions that come out of that. Should I be renewing? Should I advise a renewal? Or should we terminate? Is it worth having a vacant property to find a better tenant? What's the vacancy rate at the moment? How many people are going to open homes? Is rents going up or down? Is a bird in the hand worth two in the bush, right? These are all the things a property manager does instinctively, and they're all about risk management. As also, is the insurance managed against that? The landlord insurance, the property insurance. Do you have a maintenance plan for the property? Does a landlord, is they engaged on that? Or an improvement plan, because that goes to capital value. A whole bunch of things. So I'm happy to yield an inspection will go to valueless to a landlord, but I got to say I would like to be in the risk management business as a property manager, and I'd like our platform, as I'm sure others would too, for theirs, is to be in the risk. Let's help an agency be in the business of helping a landlord manage risk. And so I can see the future of that may not be the inspection the way it works. It might be much more around using data, AI and so on to give them all those questions context for a property manager to be able to give good advice to a landlord. And that's the type of thing when people talk about AI is going to replace a property manager, I frankly just don't think those people know what property management is. I think they are living with it. I doubt they spent much time on it. I think it's an easy thing to say to get a bit of headlines. I just don't think they frankly understand it. I don't think they know what an inspection is. If you think an inspection is taking photos and writing a report, I don't agree with that. I think an inspection is a small part of a broader idea on managing risk to help a landlord maximize their return. And there's like 20 things that relate to that. And a good property manager instinctively manages most of those, but there's no reason why you can't systematize that, build it out, add more value into it. You could be advising. We're talking to some people on this. Is maybe you can improve the kitchen between tenancies. They can get in and out in 48 hours, fix the kitchen, spend $5,000, but that gets paid back. They're the kind of stuff it's real, and that's close now. Geez, that type of stuff used to be pipe dream. One thing AI has done is going to make all of these ideas accessible, and it's going to be up to whether an agency has the cultural courage to embrace these ideas, or are they going to hold out and say, no, we're just property managers, which is a shame. But if that's what they want to be, then I think they will be left behind.
There's a story that came out the other day. I'm not sure of all the facts of it, but there's going to be some sort of rebate on solar for, I think it's like 3 hours a week or something for putting solar in, which, I looked at that and thought, what an amazing opportunity for property managers to be able to contact their landlords, say, have you got solar on, rebates here, there, and everywhere, better class of tenants, that sort of thing. Does that sort of fit into what you're thinking there about, well, let's come up with a plan to put all of our landlords, let's say, on solar?
That's absolute. I absolutely believe I think that's a harder problem than some of the others, but it will be the end point. And I think there's anything that gets to ultimately, and I think we talked about this last time we spoke. The idea, one of the ideas I don't believe in is market rent as an idea. I just don't believe it, because I don't think the property is the only dimension to renting a property. It's the quality of the landlord, the quality of the property manager, their responsiveness has a fundamental impact on the experience of being a renter. So I think people will pay more for a property if the energy has a certain set of characteristics around energy or energy efficiency or whatever it might be. Doesn't matter what it is, but fundamentally, it has to be true. In the same way, people old enough remember there were at the time with hotels. There was hotels with internet, and then some hotels had free internet. Remember that back in the day, and that was like a you pay more, essentially. It was all baked in, but you paid more. That same thing is going to be expected by more and more renters at their energy efficient home, because they pay less, water efficient home, that there's a green home, and so on, or just a cheaper home. But you're leaving aside what they're doing it for, it's just cheaper. So of course that will manifest as more rent. Two identical properties, one with solar, one without. The one with solar will have higher rent. So there's no such thing. That's my proof point. There's no such thing as market rent. I think if you can demonstrate you can create more value for renters, the rent will be higher. It's just that simple.
I think when I leave this, I'm going to go on Vibe Code an ROI calculator because
Yeah,
I think
for sure, for sure. So
that's the
these are things
missing.
where we're doing. It's amazing now, and it's all these ideas. Now, we used to talk about this 10, 20 years ago, not that idea, but things like it. And it was, oh, geez, that'd be really hard. It's not hard anymore. Not hard. It's having an understanding, having the energy to do it, having the I think all of this boils down to culture. Ultimately, I think we'll look back on AI and at least in property management. I don't know about anything else, but in property management, the biggest thing that's gonna strain you in AI is your culture. AI will strain your culture and test your culture more than anything before, because it tests whether or not you're committed to the customer and you're prepared to innovate and change. And that, if you're going to do the same thing over and over, you'll be replaced. If you're using judgment, if you're using context, if you're creating relationships, then I think you have a very bright future. And you're going to look at AI as an amazing enabler for you. So I would have nothing to fear. And I occasionally speak to people, and I'm sure you do as well. Should I buy another rent roll? I'm hearing all these stories about end times and doomsday. I mean, it's not my money, so I feel reluctant to give my full opinion. But in the spirit of a podcast, without any specifics, I can't imagine. I think the best days are ahead, and I think there's a lot of evidence to believe that.
I mean, there's studies everywhere and there's statistics everywhere, right? But OpenAI put out a study this year showing that they studied some experienced people and put their model and other large language models like Claude and Gemini to see if it could do a job the same. And I was quite surprised that it didn't fare as well in property management or real estate sales or any of those things as it did in, say, some of the other professions like travel, for example. Like, AI seemed to ace travel, but didn't do so well at real estate. Why do you think that is?
Well, I know that because you had a great article, I don't know, about 2 months ago on this topic. I think you wrote a fascinating post. And I think it's because real estate is a lot more, property management is a lot more complicated than people think. And again, I only don't say sales because I don't spend 1,000th the time on sales or property management. So I don't know it. But property management is much more complex than people think. It involves a lot more trade offs. You have to have a lot more context. I think it is the challenge is that there's so many decisions you've got to make. You've got landlords have preferences, tenants have preferences. There's legislation. There's what your agency culture is. There's what you're good at and not. There's so many things that compete that it's not as there's no answer. There's no this is the answer. One thing we're focused on at the moment is giving the property manager all the context they need to make a decision. We don't think we'll be able to make the decision for a property manager. I don't think that's particularly in the broad definition of property management. I think we'll be better at things like writing the report and all that stuff, or helping you schedule an inspection. Sure, that tech's going to do that and be really positive. But when it comes time to should I increase rent or issue advisor renewal or what rent should be and so on, that's judgment. And I think it's much more complicated than other areas, like travel. Is it what I don't really care what airline I fly to go to America, and I just want the cheapest and within reason and all that kind of stuff. I think that's probably an easy thing for an AI. I can see that kind of working through an algorithm. I think one thing with property management, how nuanced it is, and you only have to look at how much as people grow. It takes 3 to 5 years to really get the hang of property management because it's so complex. If property management you can learn in an afternoon, like imagine you did your license, and at the end of your couple of days you were like an expert,
Yeah.
which I think oddly enough some of that legislation is built on that premise. You're not an expert. You just know some rules. You don't know anything else, and it takes years. And often, one thing I critique about property management is you're only often an expert after you've made every mistake you can make and learn from it. It's not a great way to have an industry that you have to learn every mistake to become an expert. But leaving that aside, I don't think AI is going to get you that judgment. I think AI is going to give a property manager context to make decisions, but not make the decision for them.
I got to thinking again about our little course, our educational email course. So,
Mhm.
um, and just a quick plug for it here while we're here. If you find yourself sort of, bored between cricket matches or anything like that, jump onto our Third Wave PM course, thirdwave.eliteagent.education. Because, I think that there was actually, putting that together and this study together, I think there was a big clue in that is that not all landlords behave the same.
Mhm.
And so, like what I got to thinking is if every landlord's different and every property's different, every situation is ambiguous. And so, how can you give AI the context for all of that to serve each landlord the way that they want to be served?
100 and sometimes decisions are emotional, sometimes they're logical, and sometimes they're both. Humans are good at working that through largely. It's hard to imagine that. And I think that's what makes well, A, it's what makes the job interesting and why it's such a great industry. And it's also the thing I think that gives one optimism that AI is an asset, not a liability. If you're
Yeah.
doing the same job over and over and over, if it was boring and monotonous, then yeah, some of those jobs we thought, as we all know, some jobs we thought were only you had to be the smartest person to do it. Turns out you had to be smart to learn it, but once you learned it, you just did the same thing every day for the next 40 years. And machines are very good at learning those things. But if you have a job where no 2 days are the same, turns out that's where the value is. It's kind of amazing world we're now living in.
Yeah. Well, here's the other interesting study that I put my hands on, and that is you might have seen it. It was Harvard and I think Wharton and a couple of the other big schools studied some P&G employees, and they found that, and it was in a closed environment, if you like, but they found that one employee plus AI outperformed a two-person team,
Hmm.
but in an interesting, and then, like a team with AI outperformed a team without AI. But what they found is that the team started producing more balanced solutions that integrated more perspectives, sorry. So without AI, these R&D people from Procter and Gamble, they were all about the technical solution, but then when they got AI, they became more well-rounded. So they started thinking about how they were going to market their solutions. They were integrating more perspectives from the service side of things and all that sort of thing. And I got to thinking again, in property management, we have similar silos. You have your leasing person, you have the
Yeah, right.
BDM, you might have someone in marketing sitting in the corner, maybe the trust account is gone or being handled by AI or something like that. But how do you see AI perhaps doing a similar thing in property management, like making, one property manager more capable across silos.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's a I think that there's so much information sitting around, sometimes in people's heads, sometimes it's sitting in a Spirax notebook, sometimes in a one system and not another. I think what we're going to start seeing is all of that information is going to be made available in context. And so the issue is when I have to make a decision, landlord's calling, what's it about? As I pick up the phone, the screen's changing so that it's telling me what is going on and where everything's at. I don't have to say, hold on, and I'll look it up. I think the more it's there and it's a real sitting over as like an angel on my shoulder, that is where I think technology is going to aid and support a property manager in their relationships, because nothing's going to be ever forgotten. Nothing's going to be lost. But it's all going to magically surface right at the right moment. And so I think it's going to change what it means to be technology in property management, what systems are, what it does, what role it plays. But I think, for example, internally, we record now every meeting and it's now available. It's the amazing how much when that feeds your knowledge base and something we're experimenting with to offer to our customers. But the ability when everything's captured, it's a bit scary to start with, but then everything's available. There's nothing left in someone's head. There's no this idea where knowledge work was remembering stuff and finding the patterns. Sometimes if you feed the beast, then it finds patterns that you didn't even know existed. I've had our tools been just the other day. It's popped up, had a meeting about something, came up and said, there was another meeting about this with other people, and there's some other people in the organization working on the same problem because certain words were matched. It was unbelievable, and
Yeah.
something we're working on is we're kind of dog fooding ourselves as something part of our release cycle. But it's amazing.
Yeah, I actually did the same thing. I changed my note taker. I was using Fathom most of the year, and then recently switched to something called Granola,
Yeah, I've
which
heard about that. Yeah,
now, yeah, which now looks at all of my meetings basically. So I can actually go to Granola now and say, where am I spending my time?
hmm
What keeps coming up? What should I be thinking about automating? What should and without, like in some ways that's scary. Like how much time am I spending in meetings? What could
yeah, yeah.
be a phone call? Um,
Yeah.
but I think what a time to be alive. I can
It's an
actually,
amazing. Yeah, isn't it amazing?
yeah,
I think part of this is you've got to get confidence. I think you have to you try these things and really lean into it. Sometimes it's a bit creepy, but I think that's what you got to do. And the other is try vibe coding yourself. I know it sounds absurd, but try it. And it's not that hard to set up. Get cursor and so on, and choose whatever model you want to use, and start building things. And it doesn't have to be work related. There's some things where you'll like this, Sam. I hope this doesn't breach. But you had an issue where one of your rental properties was subject to in the path of tropical cyclone
cyclone.
Alfred.
Yep.
And so I was thinking about that, and I won't go into all the details because it's private to you, but I was thinking, okay, so I built myself, which I've handed off to the team, a little tool that says it checks the Bureau of Meteorology periodically, and if there's a weather event coming, which it defined, I said, what do you think's major weather event? It went and decided for me, and I said, yeah, that sounds about right. So anytime there's a weather event in this postcode, it does an alert and sends a message to the renter to say, "Dear renter, there's a weather event coming. Just take care." And then after it clears, which the system now does, then it sends another message to the renter: "Was there a problem?" And if the tenant doesn't reply, you want them to reply no or yes. And if the answer is no, then it auto sends a message to the landlord, say, just letting you know your property was part of a weather event, but everything's fine. Just a little automated communicator. Now I built that. It's not production grade. Everyone, whatever. However, I can do it, and I'm not, I have no skills at all in that space. And uh, I just did that just as a little education thing. You can do it on any topic. It doesn't have to. It can be for a hobby. It doesn't have to be for your work. But just using it, trying it, experimenting with it, you'll get a sense of what it can do and what it can't do. You'll understand certainly language models, how they work, but also where agentic models are moving to and what that means, and what a context window is, and what it needs to be able to make a decision. They're kind of thing. Unless you understand that, I don't think you will really know how it works. I think you'll find the future technology is not going to be a collection of apps, because it's very hard to create a usable model off the top of lots of little things. So it's super interesting where it's going, and the more people try it, the better.
I feel like we should vibe code something now.
Yeah,
Something that
yeah.
we've been talking just to show people. I'm going to log into Google AI Studio. One moment. You didn't realize we were gonna do that on this podcast,
No, it's
did you?
fantastic. How good is this?
Just go with the vibing. But why don't we code an improvement ROI calculator just for fun? Like,
For sure. Yeah, yeah,
this
absolutely.
like the solar thing. I mean, this anything could happen. So here we go. Here's AI Studio. So I'm just gonna go into build mode, and then my idea
Mhm.
is I want to build an ROI calculator for a property manager who is suggesting solar improvements to a landlord. Now, what do we need? We need the calculator should include the cost of the upgrade,
Yep.
the expected weekly rent, the expected savings for a tenant, and perhaps the increased capital value or something like that.
Yeah, maybe
Um,
over, say, a 10-year period.
yeah, over a 10-year period. Okay. What do you do today, Sam? I vibe coded with Ben White.
Yeah, on a podcast, live vibe coding.
How are we going? Google's now built the files. So there we go. Oh,
There
look
we
at
go,
this.
great.
Here we go. How long's that taken? All right. So my solar upgrade cost 10,000 payback period. I mean, let's not go through this, but
Sure.
that was a
It
pretty,
you go through, and what you do is, for those who haven't done it, you would play with this and you'd keep updating the prompt with anything from how maybe the mass isn't doing it the way you might want, or how it looks, or you just keep talking to it. And it's all you need is a command of the English language and an idea, and that's it. In fact, you don't even need English, any language for that matter. And you can work something out. Now you can then present this to, you get it to a point where you can publish on a website that you run or locally on your machine, and you could bring it into a listing presentation with a landlord, and you could put your brand at the top, and you can do anything you want. And this is how you would talk about engaging a landlord on this topic.
well, that's where we could end it. But I do have a couple more questions. Like that was almost the
Mic
mic drop
drop.
moment.
Yeah,
There we
yeah,
go.
mic
We've
drop
done
for
it.
you. Yeah.
But the final thing that struck me about this P&G research, and again, like I'll send it through to you if you like, but they reported that people working with AI reported significantly more positive emotions, more excitement, more enthusiasm. I mean, you just saw me get excited about the opportunity to vibe code with you, but that goes completely against that narrative that AI makes work feel cold or impersonal. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's part of the human condition is people want to be challenged, push themselves, and create something. But you've just done it, and so you got to people get them. I can't think of something more pro-cultural than encouraging that in your team. That'd be more valuable than a pay rise for people's culture. I think, of course, it depends on the pay rise, but that's what I think people want in a career. I think that's what is interesting in a career and a job, and property management is a career, and people that's what people want to be doing. I think it's called, if you think the future is I've got a customers are going to talk to bots, and that's not creating value for customers. That's how do I just, I'm not even sure what that is, but what you're describing is how to creating value for your customers and so on. So I don't see it. I don't people talk about this impersonal future for property management. I frankly don't get it. It's not an industry I recognize. Maybe we're not looking at the same thing. And I've seen a lot of property management business, so I don't think I've missed something. There's no evidence. There's no evidence anywhere, despite all the technology, that landlords want to manage their own property. None. And in fact, we've done lots of research on self-managed landlords. Most of them do it. They do it for a while, then they go back to professionally managed. And we've interviewed a lot of them. I think they're like the guy that says, "I had a bad breakup. I'm never dating again. That's it. I'm done. I'm out of the dating game." And we've all gone through it. And then a year later, you find out your mate who said it, they're now married, happily married. That's the self-managed landlord's the person that said, I had a bad relationship with the property manager. I'm never using property manager again. I'll do it myself. And then after 6 months, I'm eating ice cream at home on a Saturday night. Maybe I should get out of the house, and then it all kind of works. That's what a self-managed landlord is. It's not like this class of people that want to do it. Tell you what, if I vibe coded something, it'd be to find dissatisfied self-managed landlords who are these people who are had this bad breakup, and it is to build trust. And examples like you did, just hey, if you're a self-managed landlord, here's some tools. I'll just free, build a relationship, create value for them, build trust with them. And I got to say, a lot of those will start saying, you know what, it turns out I actually don't like dealing with arrears, and I also don't like dealing with tradies. Can you do it? And then there, away you go. So I reckon if vibe code your way into the self-managed landlord as a lead gen, if you're a BDM, holy moly, you could do some stuff in that space.
One more question. So, can you give me any sort of sneaky insight or anything like that to any AI features you might be adding into your own software?
So we're releasing a lot of stuff at the moment that pulls together context around customer sentiment because we track all the messages and all that stuff. You can start measuring, for example, just take some ideas. The idea of the inbox is this list of just ordered by time, reverse order time, most recent at the top. It's not really a great way to manage your day. A lot of people still use inbox to manage their day. If you had a machine to read it all, there's no reason why you can't actually rearrange that and group it together and actually serve it up to a property manager in a way that makes sense, which prioritized appropriately, the right person gets it. You've already maybe made a start on a couple of things. Hey, this looks like repair. We've taken the liberty of drafting a work order, da 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 da. That's the type of stuff we're working on that's coming out imminently for people. Super excited about that. As well as customer satisfaction, because you can actually measure, rather than ask someone once a year, how likely I'd recommend this service to a friend or family member. The actual best sentiment is engagement, the tone, how quickly they respond to messages, the content of the message. That's where you're going to learn about quality of your relationship. So there's that. There's a bunch of cool stuff on. I've got a bet with a few agencies on can we schedule routine inspections. And I've had some fierce debates with people on is it possible a machine can schedule routine inspections in a way that makes everyone happy, and I'm going to win that bet. I'm very confident on that one. Um, some stuff on keys. There's some cool stuff around the interaction between the mobile as a augmented reality and the key cabinet. That's pretty cool. But where it's going, then they're kind of imminent. The things though that are more powerful is things are starting to change the relationship with the clients and more breadth. I think the future is going to be an interaction model where a property manager is just not, there's not, you don't have to search. You don't have to, there's no anxiety of what's coming next. It's just, it's all there. You're not forgetting anything. To have the confidence nothing's going missing, nothing's been forgotten, everything's been considered, and you're set up to make a decision, left or right, but you have all the information in space. That's probably more like a year away. Some of the really deep stuff on that, but we're working on that at the moment as well. But that's a deeper rethink on the job in a way that sets a property manager up for real success. And that's what that gets me out of bed every morning, super excited.
I can tell actually, like, I think, this whole it is an exciting time because,
Yeah.
there's almost, the ability to do so many things that we couldn't do. But I want to thank you again for coming on to Thought Leaders. I think, this is probably our last episode of the year. So um, if there was one thing that you want to leave everyone with, what would it be?
I think a precondition to seeing the future is optimism. Be optimistic, and it's going to be easy to answer what's AI going to do. If you're not there, it's hard to find the answer. But if you're optimistic that you create value and you can create more value over time, I think the pathway is a lot clearer than people think it is.
Great advice. Ben White, thank you so much and
Thanks,
Merry
Sam.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you.